Hi, welcome back to Science 1206, the Chemical Reactions Unit. I'm Miss Ledwell, and in this lesson we'll talk about how to name binary ionic compounds with multivalent transition metals. Let's begin. First, we'll go through the steps that you need to take to name ionic compounds with transition metals. Our first step is to check the metal, the first element. Determine whether or not the metal has more than one possible charge by checking the periodic table that has the ionic charges listed. Next, find the charge of the nonmetal by recalling its group number on the periodic table or by checking the periodic table with the ionic charges listed. Then we need to balance the charges. The total positive and negative charges must balance out, that is, they should add up to 0. Finally, we're going to write the name of the compound using Roman numerals for multivalent transition metals to show the charge of the metal. Let's try an example. Our first example, we're going to look at the compound PbCl2. Our first step is to find the metal on the periodic table. The metal is lead. Lead is a multivalent metal, meaning it can have more than one possible charge. We know this because we see two charges listed on the periodic table. The common charges for lead are +2 and +4. Our next step is to determine the charge of the nonmetal. The nonmetal in PbCl2 is chlorine. It belongs to group 17, so its charge is -1. Now we're going to balance the charges. There are 2 chloride ions in PbCl2. Each chloride ion has a charge of -1, giving us a total charge of -2 for the 2 chloride ions in the compound. 2 chloride ions times a charge of -1 each equals -2 total. We need a lead ion to balance this out to get a 0 net charge. The common charges for lead are +2 and +4. Which one would balance out the -2 charge? In this case, a lead ion with a +2 charge would make the compound neutral. We notice that +2 from lead and -2 from chloride ions adds up to 0. Now we're going to write the name of the compound. In the last step, we determined that the charge of the lead ion is +2. Now we need to use Roman numerals to indicate this charge. So we write lead and then in brackets our Roman numerals. The name of the entire compound then is lead 2 chloride. Let's look at another example. Now we'll look at Fe2O3 as an example. So again, our first step is to find the metal on the periodic table. The metal is iron. Iron is a multivalent metal, meaning it can have more than one possible charge. Common charges for iron are +3 and +2. We need to determine the charge of the nonmetal. The nonmetal is oxygen. It belongs to group 16, so its charge is -2. Now we need to balance out the charges. There are 3 oxide ions in Fe2O3, each with a -2 charge, giving us a total charge of -6 for the oxide ions in the compound. 3 oxide ions times a charge of -2 each gives us -6 total. We know from the formula that we have 2 iron ions, and the common charges for iron are +2 and +3. So 2 of which version of iron, iron 2 or iron 3, would balance out the -6 charge coming from the oxide ions? In this case, 2 iron ions with a +3 charge each would make the compound neutral, because 2 iron ions multiplied by +3 charge each gives us +6 total. We notice a +6 in total from iron and -6 total charge from the oxide ions adds up to 0, resulting in a neutral compound. Now we're going to write the name of the compound. In the last step, we determined that the charge of the iron ion is +3. Now we need to use Roman numerals to indicate this charge. So we write iron and in brackets our Roman numerals to indicate 3. The name of the entire compound is iron 3 oxide. Now that we've done some examples, we're going to do some practice. So pause this instructional video, grab a pencil and some paper, or open up a blank document on your electronic device. Number your paper or document from 1 to 10. As each compound in the table on the next slide is revealed, write down the name of the compound. We will then review the correct answers one by one. After you've numbered your paper or your document, please resume this instructional video. Now it's time for some practice. I'll reveal the chemical formula for each compound. You write down the name and then you check it when we go over the correct answer. So our first chemical formula is FeBr3. What is the name of this compound? And this compound is iron 3 bromide. Bromide ions have a charge of -1 and there's 3 of them. So together they have a charge of -3, and our iron with a +3 charge will balance that out and make a neutral compound. Our next formula is CuS, and that one is copper 2 sulfide. Third, we have CrF3. That one's chromium 3 fluoride. Next up, we have MnS2, which is manganese 4 sulfide. Now we have FeI2, that's iron 2 oxide. Number 6 is NiO, and that one's nickel 2 oxide. Then we have CoCl3, cobalt 3 chloride, CuBr, copper 1 bromide. Number 9, Cr2S3, is chromium 3 sulfide. And our last one, NiBr3, is nickel 3 bromide. Now it's time to review. Complete the learning activities for this lesson in Brightspace.